Hello, everybody. I am Abdi Lajavardi. I am the CEO of Pro Education Group. We are the consulting firm in education sector. We've been serving the education sector for the last 18 years. And if this is the first time you see our program or you are repeat viewers of ours, as you know, in our program, Education for Better World, we look to have different guests from different, industries of parts of industries of education and from different perspective. And today I have a wonderful guest, Dr. Dave from the country of Tonga. Dr. Dave is educated in the US, and we're going to learn more about him. He's a former Minister of Trade and Commerce from country of Tonga, and we are delighted to have him with us today. So, Dr. Dave, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you, Abdi. Happy to be
Well,
here.
it's delightful to have you. Dr. Dave, why don't you start telling us about Tonga? Tell us about your home country. Where is it? And then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Abdi. Tonga is a small little island with a big oceanography. The population is only 100,000, a little over that. We have about twice or three times the amount of people overseas, mainly in New Zealand, Australia, and the United States, that live abroad. The economic of Tonga is based on remittances from those that go overseas. They send back approximately 30 to 50% of the GDP. Other than that, yeah, it's a small little nation, but as in the politics of the global politics, it's one vote, one nation, right? And yeah, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Absolutely. I have to just for audience, I've had the pleasure of to travel to many places, and I never been to Tonga, but I've been close enough to New Zealand and Australia, and of course Fiji and Tahiti. And next time, I'm going to make sure that I would stop in Tonga
Yeah.
because that part of the world is just paradise, beautiful.
Yeah, so
So,
just a little background of since you mentioned that, right? That Tonga is part of the Polynesian group, right? The Polynesian bloc normally you can say is Tahiti, Tonga, the Maoris in New Zealand, the Cook Islanders, the Samoans, the Hawaiians. So that block is pretty big. Within that, we are in the Pacific region, which has the Melanesians and the Micronesians,
yeah.
right? So often the government has a Pacific forum where the government sit together as a whole to discuss things because of the size of the different smaller country, if you will.
Well, thank you very much for that insight. So now tell us about your educational journey. How did that take you, and what did you study? Where did you study? And let's share with the audience about your educational background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, like most of us who migrate to overseas, I migrated to the United States since 1976. Uh, so my doctorate program that I was in was in the School of Education, and that's why I have an insight into the educational system. And I did my doctorate program at Pepperdine University, a very good school. And specifically, I did my research and my thesis on knowledge management. Now, having said that, the program was an organizational leadership program that was housed inside the School of Education. So I had to have a merge or a synthesis between business and organizational leadership and management, and also a field that I decided to study of my thesis, which was knowledge management, to manage knowledge. So that's the educational background.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And then from professional experience, again, tell us about. I mean, you kind of alluded to it. That's a good segue to you becoming a minister of trade and commerce in Tonga. Tell us about that experience, if you would, please.
Yes, remember, as a former minister, as a diplomat, that's not my claim to fame, because that was an outset of my professional expertise. My expertise is within system thinking, um, which is what I enjoy to do every day of my life. Right. As a matter of fact, I'm authoring a book now on the practicality of system thinking. But on a professional level, I have this innate gift of seeing structure, if you will, architecture, which is the issue behind within how organization operates. Right, you don't get to see, you get to see the faces and the services. But what most people don't understand is there's a system by which that enable and facilitate all those people providing those goods and services. Now, I've been able to do some of the bigger systems like Boeing Company. When I did that type of work, I then went to the UC Irvine, University of California in Irvine, to their professional department, which then I merged which was what my dissertation was about, the how to do system-driven type of training in education. Right, as you know, in education, we separate out sometimes within the same organization, like the universities. You will often see the academic program, and then you will see the professional development program, often referred to as their extension program. Right, and in that they will look at the professional side of leaving the academic world. For example, you can get a degree in project management, but there's a professional side of project management, which is PMI. Right, and often this service by the university, which is the professional development, provides training in those areas. That is mostly catered to professional type of training. Now, what I did at the Boeing Company, and I because I looked at their systems, I then brought their systems to UC Irvine, and I merged that with their curriculums, if you will. And then we went back into Boeing and taught it during work. Remember, it's pretty new to have people be trained at work, but with that professional development training from the university. Right now, the reason why that is enabled is because you're not teaching a theoretical framework. You're teaching the system by which the theories of the university is teaching.
Yes.
Right? So if you don't often convert the theoretical curriculum to a system, which is the how to do, right? Then big organizations have a tendency to say, no, that's after work type of schooling. Right, but I was able to do this training within the Boeing Company during work, and because the value to them was their system being taught to their workers, which they have a yearly requirement from the Department of Defense, right, as well as bringing the university professional side, in merging the two, so that both sides are happy.
Well, that's very interesting what you indicate, because I have talked to many professionals like yourself, and one of the issues that I think today more and more young kids are looking at and asking themselves questions all throughout education. It used to be, they would say you have to take this course because if you don't take these, you won't graduate. And people, they were studying to get a degree, but more and more people are ending up with degrees that doesn't really serve them very well. Now students throughout their education asking exactly what you are bringing out with our audience, that what's the purpose of me learning about organic chemistry or physics or mathematics or music or everything. They question the validity of the knowledge, and that I think is something that you put your finger on. Employers are obviously thinking about, if I'm going to pay for something or take my employees out of the production and have them get engaged on a training, what benefit would it have for our company or our customers? And you're so right. So let me ask you another question. Yes, go ahead,
Sure.
please.
No, no, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to ask you a question in regards to your perspective about education, as you've been, throughout your education, many years of going to school and seeing a lot of different professors and teachers, and at the same time with you professionally working with other educators. You mentioned, from UCI and other institutions that you've been involved with. What do you think is a good definition for a good teacher, competent teacher, professional teacher? How do you define somebody that you would say this is a teacher that we need to kind of always strive to become?
Thank you, Abdi. Abdi, it's a very in-depth question, because when you ask about the educator themselves, whether he or she, right? That's the question. But an educator or a teacher is housed within the system of education, right? And
Absolutely.
oftentimes to answer those type of questions with depth, we can give off textbook answers, but my answer would be to give depth to what you're asking, right? Remember, a system is by design, right? And often the educational system of today, we have to ask the question, what was the mindset of those that designed it back when it was being designed?
Right.
That will give us a background of what was within the environment they were looking to achieve. And then it would make sense to us as to what is it that we're dealing with today. And within that framework, you will then can answer, okay, so the mindset was here, that were the challenges. So therefore they designed the system this way. So the curriculum was put in place, the instructor was put in place, the delivery methodology, the assessment, and then it will make sense.
Right.
Right now, let me work it backward.
Okay. Sounds
My
good.
answer to you today, given what I know and what my professional experience has been, that teachers today has to go to the experience by which we are trying to provide for the students, right? It was simply just giving instruction to get a degree, to get a certificate, right? Then you teach within the system. The system being, it's a system of memorization. I hate to say that, but as a teacher, you're basically downloading information into the kids and let them regurgitate it to you either in an assessment format or by answering questions to you. Right now, if that's the mode of which we do is what we have experienced in school, right? We have to ask the question, but what is the experience we intend for the students, not for the teachers to experience when they leave the school, right? Which by definition is basically earn a living. Right now, think of this in answering this. When you're teaching kids, you're teaching them in what we have experienced. It's a theoretical framework, right? We teach you the theoretical framework. Now, when a kid leaves the school, what they walk into is a working environment. A working environment requires skills, not theoretical framework. So then you have a gap, which are indicators of the system by which we have designed, that you have people graduating from school with theoretical knowledge, but the work requires skills and how to do application, right? That being the gap is where most of the students are failing. So if you worked it backward from the experience by which we want them to experience, which is working, which is having a skill and earning their living, you then look between that and what you have taught at school, which is all theory, then in system thinking, right? And now I answer from a system perspective. You know, we call it muscle memories, right? That we design systems to convert theoretical knowledge to be practiced in a system at work. And when you practice a system over and over again, your muscle memories begins to build up. And that's where the process-based type of knowledge, which is skill and that sort of experience, is required. But most kids that come out of college or school, which is theoretical, they can't do that for themselves most of the time. Right? So often what do you have? You have people that go in and be an internship, if you will. Right? And you may even have a doctorate, but if it's all theoretical, you're just as smart as a person who came off with a high school degree or high school diploma. So in reality, my point is that we need to work the system backward as a requirement-driven type of system, right? The requirement is of the people that goes into gaining an employment or running their own business, which requires process and system-driven type of knowledge practice, how to do, right? What we teach out of school, it is why, theoretical frameworks, right? To bridge that, the way I've done it in out of for example, the Boeing company and also UC Irvine, I couldn't go to the theory of why, which is the academic programs, but I went to their professional development side, right? And then to do that, I brought back the system by which the work was performing.
Absolutely.
Right? And then you teach an integration of why and what to do and how to do. And that's the way I would answer. But then again, I end with this, Abdi. We can't really understand a system by just experiencing it without understanding the mindset of those who designed it.
Well, I think you're very much on target when you talk about how people are taught and used traditionally used to be, and I see more and more schools are recognizing to not have the practical application of the knowledge the students are left. So, but it's all how they designed it, like you said, because it used to be you need to have so much knowledge in order to get a bachelor degree. You need
Right.
to have so much knowledge to get masters and PhD. But people didn't really care. So you will learn by doing. After a few years, you will really know what's going on. But today, the word changes so fast. Industries, pop up overnight, and they need people. They need knowledge workers that are able to perform. So it's not that opportunity like used to be, that you get so many years after a school to learn the practical aspects on doing. So the employer expect you to be job ready when you come. But there is one other thing that you mentioned, because it's part of, then it goes to a question that I have, because I've seen a lot of successful people like yourself. They put value into it, and it really fuels their success. Because beside the knowledge and the experience, the practicality of that knowledge, the application of that knowledge, then becomes who you are as a person, how you are going to critically apply it to the work and deliver it to the customer. And that brings out a perspective on professional mindset, right? A lot of people may know how to do something, but that doesn't necessarily make them successful, because you have to interact with so many different people at work that they are responsible for different things, right? Or bottom line, you're dealing with customer that doesn't really care about how the back end, as you said, the whole system works. They're looking at what they want as a fruit or service that is delivered to them. How do you see that professional mindset? First, how do you define it? In your perspective, how do you define a professional mindset? And then how would the students strive to, gain that and keep it in life, the way you and other professionals and successful people have been able to do?
Thank you, Abdi. That's a very in-depth question. And the way I would answer it is this. Most people think critically about things in a linear fashion, in an isolated fashion, in a specialized fashion, right? But what is of reality, it is that nothing is isolated, right? So that brings the thinking of why I enjoy the type of expertise that I have done for so long. And that also talks to the area that is non-academic. And I'm talking for myself, of having gifts. Right? Most people don't understand what their gifts are until they're in the 40s and 50s, if you will. Right? But gifts, we understand they are not something that was taught, in this world at least. Some people have certain gifts that they were born with, right? But often we get so caught up in the system of education, that's the very thing that we visit the most, right? Is your gift. Because you're so busy with all the complexity of the curriculum and the certificate programs you're going after. Now, let me go back to the professional mindset. As you said, let's work it backward, right? You have a client, maybe a corporate client, maybe a government client, or maybe they're clients that purchase your goods and services that you provide. And all they experience is that services or goods that you provide, right? That may be as a relationship professionally with a salesperson, right? And he may or she may be in a marketing department, right? And the customer doesn't understand that the back end has professional services such as accounting, legal, planning, which are horizontal uh, functionalities. And then there are vertical functionalities. In a manufacturing, you have your engineering and design, your manufacturing, your supply chain, and your support. in the service industry be different, right? But those put together as a system on the back end, the customer doesn't understand that, right? But here's to bring the point across. You talk to the salesperson. What does he do? He has a function of selling. How does he do that? He has a job description, right? And he's paid accordingly to the scales. Those are the back end stuff, right? But what the customer doesn't understand that nothing that was delivered to him or her was disconnected by individuals, right? Here's the understanding from system thinking. Just because you have parts of a car in a box does not make a car.
That's well said.
Right? So if you give people services from the in isolation and specialization with those silo mindsets, right? It's often why you see organization today in the Fortune 500 research today that they are dying off after five to 10 years, right? Why? Because they can't keep up with the changes. Because the change happened as a complete system. The example people will say, no, the arm rights. System people say, no, the body rights. So the parts and the specialized people will argue, no, it's the arm that technically right. Then the system people say, well, why don't you cut off the arm and put it on a desk and give it a piece of paper and pen and see if it writes for you, right? The argument being on a professional mindset that the arm and the hands can play its functionality only within the whole system. That when it's removed from the system, it's just a dead part. So from a professional mindset and a mental model, if you will, if we don't adapt the system thinking, which the whole system thinking is under the word of interconnectedness, right? But often, what do we do when we go in as consultants to organization? You know, I make the argument you can't go and deal with a complex and large-scale problem with simple-minded tools. Often the approach and the methodologies and the tools that we take to these complex systems are very simple-minded and very focused and very silo-driven. Whether it's lean, quality, efficiency, you know, all of that just look at from their own silo rather than looking at how the whole system work together and function to achieve synergy. That's a long-winded answer, but
And very well said. You and I have spoken, offline before, because truly, when you think about the universe as it is, right? We are a small piece of this universe. And every elements in this universe needs to be in place in order for universe to work, well. And if we are mindful of other elements, other individuals, our environment, everything within the universe that we are a part of, and think that way, we live a better life. But if we don't take care of, elements within the universe, be it, our environment or other individuals that we may not, care about, somewhere down the line, we're going to see that this system is not working very well. And I think it's very much the point that you're making. We are, all of us, we are part of various systems. And in order to live a good and happy life, we have to be in line with the systems that we are part of within a family or a team of group of professionals working at a company, or from an individual residents of a city or a country or a globe.
Right.
So you
And
said this way you could have explained it, and I am happy for your perspective and analysis. Thank you.
yeah, and Abdi, I just want to share when I did my dissertation on knowledge management, right? Chapter 2 and are more of background checking of the theoretical framework by which you're doing your studies in and you're writing a dissertation about. Now, I had to look at the public school and educational framework and system, right? And one of the things that it dawned on me by doing the research because of seeing images, right? That those that designed the system back then in the 16th century and the 17th century, right? We were migrating from a farming, highly specialized people living in villages to those that were the thinkers of those days, of the designers, if you will, were trying to move people from the farming to the factories, right? And so when they were going through that migration, the focus was strictly on the labor, right? How to take the labor of the people from the farms, agriculture, to the factory, which is put them in a factory. Then the thinkers of the day, they were saying it should be bureaucratic, right? It should be time and motion studied for efficiency, to put the people to line up like factories, like machines,
Right.
right? And if you look at that transition, the educational system was born out of that environment. So now you can see that that's what they were training the people toward, which is sitting in rows very methodically, keeping your mouth shut, raising your hands, right? Taking tests, standardizing them. And we have institutionalized labor, such as the International Labor Organization, right? We have standards as 8 to 5. We're paid hourly, right? And then by the time anything you do over after work, after 8 hours, is overtime, right? And then when you're 65, you're physically and your labor is no longer at its peak, that you should go home and retire, right? Now, me doing my studies and understanding what I realized, that, well, the world has moved on from labor. The world now understands that the labor, it is the cheapest part of a human being. That managing their labor for optimization, it's really not something that's too vibrant at this time. So today, look at the United States, right? Where has all the manufacturing gone to? They go out and seek where the labor is cheapest: Southeast Asia, North America, and so forth and so forth, right? But when all those labor manufacturers left, we were left, well, what do we do with our people, right? Which then people realized that that old man there may be 65 years old, and he may have gray hair, and he may not walk as swiftly as he did when he was in his 20s, but his brain, his knowledge, to have that person walk out of your factory with all that knowledge in his head that he has gained over 50 years or 35 years. Corporations in America then realize that we have missed the boat for so long, that it is the knowledge of people and their talents and their energy. It is what we need to focus this century on. And that's why I enjoy this kind of conversation, because we can talk about, as to why the system was designed that way. Yes, for the factories, for the labor of people. But today is about the gifts and the knowledge and the talents and the energy of people that can create breakthrough changes.
No, absolutely.
Same
And
ways.
as you see, a lot of organization here, not only in the US, around the world, they look at an agile, standards of management and functionality because of the complexity and ever-changing world that we are in. And it's exciting, definitely is exciting, but that requires then not only the educators, but everybody to, think how we can adopt to a new standards that can make us, be more, I don't want to say productive, because production, uh, you can produce things, and it's not how much you can produce, it's how well you can produce. And I think when you talk about quality, now it goes into a little deeper discussion about how people are engaged and how people are, actually feel fulfilled with whatever it is that they're doing or whatever it is that they're learning. So today, if you want to be a good student, so you want to be a good educator, or you want to be a good professional in every area, you have to have a reason that you are clear about what you're doing is a you know a sponsoring of your happiness.
True.
And I think for that we do not need that what you said as a professional mindset.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed very much our conversation, and I am delighted to have you in this show. And I look forward actually to continue our conversation in another session. So, Dr. Dave, thank you very much, and it has been delightful. Is there any last word you want to share with our audience before we conclude?
Yeah, but Abdi, this is a common finding I find in most organizations, right? Why are big corporations in America and around the world are dying off in year 5 and year 10? Right? Because of our inability to adapt, right? Now, why is it that most organizations like Sears Roebuck, they're dying off, GE is dying off, right? Why are they dying off at such a pace? Because if you look at the system by which they design, it is a day-to-day operation. I work in manufacturing, he works in engineering, right? And we pull it all together, and that's our 8 to 5 job. When you ask most corporations, but what about the innovative side of human beings, which is the innovative changes of organization? There is absolutely no job description. There is no incentive programs. There is no system in place to drive and enable changes continuously. Therefore, that's part of what I do uh, as a system designer. It is not only to map out the current day-to-day system, the 8 to 5 jobs of people, but also to build a change management system that enable and facilitate the changes in innovation in people. So that your incentive system, you pay people for their 8 to 5 recurrent work, but you also pay them for being productive in innovation and bringing about changes. And I believe that the synergy of those two provides the ability of organizations to adapt. And I think that is what's needed in our educational system today.
Well said. And I agree. And I would like to invite you back to this program because there are areas, we hear about this big quit that I want to hear your perspective and see why that is happening at such a huge rate. Is it part of the pandemic, or is it really part of this change that we are talking about that we are going through.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. Appreciate your wisdom, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Abdi. Cheers.
Cheers.